Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
Now, historic films made in the spring of 1948 and just released show Eniwetok preparing for heavily guarded and still largely secret tests of new atomic weapons. The test's purpose is to measure atomic effects on thousands of different materials, 30,000 tons of them, not, as at Bikini, to prove military effectiveness.
San Francisco police say that 9 persons have been arrested in a narcotics raid on the headquarters of the Grateful Dead, a widely popular singing group. 2 members of the group, Rod McKernan and Robert Weir, and their business manager, Danny Rifkin, have been booked on suspicion of possessing narcotics.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
Hey, we got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Well, strange lights are causing a viral buzz on YouTube. Could we have caught extraterrestrial activity on a recent newscast? Brandon Arroyo investigates.
As the newscast ended, the controversy began back on September 26th. What is that light shining in the back of the dark night sky?
With coverage reaching all the way back to 1948, for over 70 years, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Now, Fate Magazine Radio is carrying on that tradition of setting the standard in paranormal talk radio as we report and discuss some of the most mysterious and perplexing phenomena imaginable in this strange world of ours. Now, here is your host of Fate Magazine Radio, Kat Hobson.
Good evening. Welcome to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host, and you are listening to WBHM-DB out of Birmingham, Alabama. I am so pleased that you're here because I think this is going to be one of the more interesting shows that we've had. That's hard to say because we have interesting guests every week, but I think this is going to be kind of unique. It's different for me. I don't deal a lot with past lives. I know I have them. I know that I have people that have been in my life for much more than this one. A friend wrote a book and the inscription said, my dear and loyal friend for this and many other lives, through many lives, which is true. So, I just think this is going to be a topic that's going to get a lot of interest because it's people who have come together over millennia, 6,000 years, and they have to date 29 lives that intertwined. I just think that's interesting. I don't know how this works. I have several friends who are regression therapists. I don't know if they deal in this. I tagged them in the announcement for the show so that they might be interested in listening and they could, give me their input later. I just love learning. But primarily, these are good and fun people who have had some of the more interesting experiences possible for, us in this mortal plane. And I can't wait for y'all to meet them. I have Dave. I am so probably going to mispronounce your name, but Bettenhausen?
Perfect.
Oh, wow. I'm going to take that and run with it.
Go with the cat.
And then Carla, is it Bogni-Kidd?
No, it's Bogni-Kidd.
Bogni-Kidd. Okay, thank you so much. I'm so sorry.
You're welcome. That's okay.
I am just really fascinated because you've met each other more than once in a non-supernatural way in this lifetime.
Yes.
That's correct.
It's odd. Okay, it is odd because you met when you, Carla, were young and you were a little older, Dave, but you met all the way out in Boston. Dave, where did you live at that time?
Well, Kat, this is a real interesting story because we actually remembered this story while we were meditating, and I was actually a 3-year-old and Carla was 4, so she was actually the much older woman. I lived in Nebraska. My father was going to graduate school in Nebraska, and we traveled all the way across the country. And I don't remember a lot except that when I was meditating, and I got this memory of being on a beach and running on the beach, and I could see the Ferris wheels in the background and the roller coasters and those kind of things. And since we were meditating as an office, and we'll kind of explain that later, Carla said, "When were you in Boston?" You were in Boston, and I was explaining it to her, and she said, "Well, you were on Revere Beach." And I said, "Well, the strangest thing happened that day. I was running on the beach, screaming and yelling, and this little girl jumped up and pushed me down, sat on my chest, gave me a kiss on the forehead, and then she jumped up and put both hands on her hips, and she yelled, 'Stop bothering her, quit bothering my family.' And in the background, I heard a woman say, 'Carla, that's not how little girls act.' And again, this little girl had on this little 2-piece blue bathing suit, a little pot belly hanging over. And Carla, what did you say?"
Well, I remembered it. My sister was also working in the office with us. We both looked at him in utter shock and disbelief. I remember that day because I was from a good Catholic family, 5 girls. I was the baby. Mother and father were separated off and on, but this particular day, they had got rented 2 cabs to take us to Revere Beach. We lived in Boston. We didn't have our own car. So all of us got into the 2 cabs, went to Revere Beach, and for whatever reason, when we arrived, I did not have a bathing suit. Normally, I would have inherited one from one of my sisters, but for whatever the reason, we all went across the street to the little souvenir shop, and my parents, who really could not afford to do this, bought me my first brand new 2-piece blue ruffled bathing suit. And I always remembered it, first of all, because I had something new. Second of all, or maybe just the reverse, my parents were together with us, all of us as a family that day, and, they were trying to make it work, and, in the long run it didn't, but it stuck with me. So when Dave said this, you can only imagine, it's like, how could you possibly know this? I could draw that bathing suit. It's so vivid in my mind. But I had not thought about it until that day when he brought it up.
And Kat, since you were asking, what really happened then is it was 36 years later. I was finishing my residency and looking for a practice to buy. And Carla was the office manager at that practice. So we met each other at 3 and 4, and then again at 39 and 40 years old. And we really didn't even remember we had the same memory until I shared it about 16 years later, because what really ended up being sort of by chance, meeting when we were 3 and 4, became a permanent thing where we became very good friends, and she was my office manager. And what happened is we started a new electronic medical records about 6 years ago, and I became a tired and grouchy old doctor. And
cranky.
Yes, very cranky. And she said, we've got to do something with you. And so what'd you say, Carla?
I said, well, we are either going to schedule an appointment with a counselor to see what the heck is the matter with you, or we should try to meditate, because I had seen an article in the AARP magazine one morning about meditation and the benefits. So I asked him, and he said, we could meditate as an office. And he said, well, okay, let's try to meditate. So we did.
And actually, Kat, it was great to start with, because electronic medical records, when that started, was like 12 or 14 hours in a row on the computer every day. And what we got to do on those days was shut off the computer for 30 minutes. Carla lit a candle. We played some music. I got away from that, then turned the computers back on, and I started seeing patients in my office. And what happened after that is really what led to finding 29 lives. It was about on the third day, I was meditating with Carla. The other girls had decided coming in early was too much of a hassle. We meditated. We all got up and started to go back out to work. And I had to walk in and tell her, Carla, you'll probably think I'm crazy, but I think I was talking to your mother. She smiles. Yeah, she smiled. She was jovial. She was happy. I said, Carla, she reminded you from a side view because she had the same eyelashes you do. And she kept showing me a shoe. And Carla brought up shoes on the computer. And she had a picture of 60 or 70 shoes. And I went over and pointed at one of the shoes. And what'd you say, Carla?
Well, it wasn't just a shoe. My mother and father were ballroom dancers. So she had a particular ballroom dancing shoe that she wore her whole life, not just for dancing, but she would wear it to church and for dress up. It was an open-toed sandal. And there's no way he would have gotten that correct. He pointed to it, and I thought, okay. My only question was, why is she coming to him and not me?
Right? That would have been my question, too. Unless she was just trying to let y'all know that, I know he's yours, so, da-da-da. But but y'all weren't together, were you, at that time?
No.
Because I think you had said that when you started meditating that y'all were,
working as
just
an office
workmates.
Just workmates. She was my office manager. I was a physician. I thought certainly I was crazy because I was talking to her mother. However, we thought this is sort of exciting, and so we have to keep trying meditation. So we kept meditating. We started meeting. I met Isabella, who was my spirit guide. Carla met Elizabeth, who was her spirit guide. And one day, Isabella was starting to tell me lessons that were important in life. I was seeing things like little visions of things. I saw a Mayan temple. I saw this row of stuffed squirrels, which I didn't know what that meant. I started seeing
Wait a minute, stuffed squirrels?
Stuffed squirrels.
Like taxidermy?
Like taxidermy.
Yes. Interesting.
I saw
faces.
Indian
You saw
signs.
lots of faces.
Lots of faces. I saw a little Civil War scene where somebody was shot and they were waving the Bible at me. Excuse me. And then one day I was at home trying to meditate, and I got this memory where I got hit in the chest, knocked down. I realized I had been shot. I was looking across an alley, and I could see Carla standing on the other side of the alley with some men. gunfire was shooting from there. Now, I knew it was Carla because of her eyes. However, she was dressed different. She was dressed like a flapper. And so the next day, so I thought that was interesting. And then the next day I was meditating and I started to get some details, and I realized that I had met that flapper. And so I went to tell Carla the details that I had met a flapper named Ruby Donaldson in Chicago sometime in the 1920s, that Ruby worked for some mobster named Angelo, and that we had met at Angelo's wedding. And somehow, because she was involved with the mobsters, one of them, I thought, shot me. And so Carla, being as curious she is, there was a day she wasn't working, and she started doing research.
And
Carla,
I started, actually, I Googled Ancestry.com and started to look for Ruby Donaldson, and didn't I find a Ruby Donaldson born in Bullock, Georgia in 1904 to James and Anna Donaldson, my parents. I was one of 11 children, and then I went further and found newspaper articles on a mobster named Angelo Genna from Chicago in the 1920s. He actually was the boss in Little Italy before Al Capone. I found another article, newspaper article, that showed his wedding cake. And why was his wedding cake in the paper? It was over 10 feet tall. It was serving 3,000 people, probably all mobsters.
Holy cow.
So I called Dave back and I said, oh my God, I found this and I found this and I found this. So the names you're giving me, I never heard of Angelo Genna before, unless you've done extensive history on gangsters, which I never did. I couldn't possibly have known these names or the dates or anything else. And how would I possibly have known anything about Ruby Donaldson?
And she found the wedding announcement that said Angelo was married to Lucy Spinola on January 10th, 1925.
Yeah.
And this is when we started to think there's even more going on here than we understand, because somehow we met in this life as kids, didn't meet again for 36 years, and somehow we know each other from 1925 before either of us were born.
Fascinating, right?
It starts to build. So we keep meditating. We keep logging and journaling everything that we learn. I think the most amazing day was when I was trying to tell Carla one of the conversations I was having with Ruby Donaldson.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm giving her the conversation, I literally feel like I become J.J. Wright, the person I was in that life. And as I'm talking to Carla, Carla starts finishing the sentences because she has the same memory.
See, I just think that is so astounding.
It was beyond astounding. Talk about chills up and down the back, and it was so surreal.
Well, but I mean, this was a romantic relationship that y'all are coming together discussing. And didn't that kind of feel off kilter, like oh, this is very bizarre, but cool.
Oh,
but still bizarre.
We ran out of the room, both of us.
Yeah, we both got up and ran down the hall because Carla had been my best friend forever. But nothing, and so finding and having emotional feelings, we both thought we were a little strange. Things weren't quite right. I was going through a difficult time in the middle of a divorce, actually, at that time. So none of this was really appropriate. And so, we were shocked.
Well, sure.
And then we kept meditating. We kept journaling. Over a 5-year period, we found 42 separate lives for me, 34 lives for Carla, and 29 of them that we were together.
Now, that's what we're going to have to get into. But first, we have to take our break. y'all, we'll be right back after this. Thank you so much for being here with us on Fate Mag Radio, and we'll be right back. You come back too.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am Kat Hobson, your host, or as my friend Rick says, the voice of Fate. I kind of like that. Now, before we went to break, and I so rudely interrupted you, Dave, we were just cruising through, and I didn't really give you a chance to finish, but we were talking about something else during the break, so I'm going to let you run here. You go where you want to.
All right, Kat. So we were talking a little bit about how much it shocked us that we had learned about Ruby and JJ. We had learned all these past lives. We had learned them over a 5-year period. We actually went and got past life regression training by Dr. Brian Weiss because we wanted to know more. We, of course, read a lot. But really what became important to us during all of our meditation sessions is that almost every single session, we got a new lesson from my spirit guide named Isabella. And to explain Isabella, I'm going to have to say she sort of reminds me of Carla, who is my best friend. She sort of keeps me straight. She's she's the a woman in my head always telling me what's the right thing to do. And that's really part of the job of the spirit guide. It's to make you ask the right questions And one day Isabella was trying to explain to us that you don't need the 10 Commandments. You don't need a whole lot of other rules. You just need 5 simple rules. And she says the 5 simple rules are: live without conceit, live without jealousy, live without selfishness, always be forgiving, and make all of your decisions out of love. She says if you follow that, you will create no karma. You will not continue on this wheel of returning for past lives and more lives. You will, if you want to call it, graduate and return back to heaven. Isabella is this incredible, sweet, yet stern. When she describes herself, she says that she is literally the hand of God reaching out to keep hold of us, because our human ways will take us in ways that do not bring us closer to God. And so Isabella has been here with me, she says, since my first life 6,000 years ago. Elizabeth says she has been with Carla for the same 6,000 years. And so this first big lesson was the 5 simple rules. The 5 simple rules become very easy. Before you make any decision, respond to almost anything, you have to ask yourself, is this a conceited decision? Is it based on what's good for me? Is it based on only what I want? So it's some sort of based on desire only. Is it based that I'm mad because somebody else has more than I want, so I want what they have? It's based on that jealousy. Am I not willing to give of myself, so I'm selfish? Am I not being my best self because I'm not letting go? I keep holding grudges, which blocks you from learning and growing. So if you make the decisions not based on those things, but base it on the love for each other, the love of this world, you'll return back to God, who is love, because it's sort of karma related. The more you get closer to making decisions out of love, the more you overcome the karma that you may have created in a past life. Does that sort of make sense?
The 10 Commandments are based on the 5 simple rules. They're all intertwined.
Well, I think that just about everything that we have coming through is interrelated, relevant to that. Because we were talking about the 5 agreements during the break. The 4 agreements, my bad.
Right,
and,
the 4 agreements.
I was on the 5 simple rules crossing with the 4 agreements. But, all of this is commingled.
Yes.
It's
absolutely.
Just fascinating.
And Isabella was trying to tell us that we need to make these simple rules, and she gave us one of the commandments as a sort of an example. She says, it was written historically in Deuteronomy that you should not covet thy neighbor's house, possessions, wife, donkey, ass, etc. And what it really is, you should not covet your neighbor's goods. You shouldn't cover what he owns. And she says, it was written historically, but your neighbor doesn't own his wife. That's actually a form of conceit. If he thinks he owns his wife, it's a form of conceit. Yes. And so his wife should own herself. So the 10 Commandments has a little mistake. She said, so you have to use these simpler rules because they're not written culturally or historically, because the Bible makes some mistakes. She says, because it's written based on a historical time frame.
Exactly. In that day and age, he did own her.
In that day and age, he did own her. And it's been interesting because Carla went back and looked at some of her 34 lives, And what'd you find out, Carla?
Well, I was owned in lots of them. My very first one, well, I guess it wasn't the first. It's a little bit further into that. I was an orphan, and I was owned by wealthy Thracian warlords, and I was expected to be their shepherd girl. Then again, around 1800 BC, I was a slave, and I was owned by my master. I was raped, forced to bear him a son. It went on and on. 1950 BC, I was a slave to the Queen of Sheba. In AD 1400s, I was taken as a concubine by King Henry V. I was an 11-year-old girl, raped, beaten, impregnated. This has been going on for centuries with women, not just women, but the ownership has got to stop in all forms.
I agree.
And so some of those kind of lessons we've also been learning as we've been writing our book, The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabel, God, and Elizabeth. We've also learned lessons going through past lives. An example is there's a life where we're a Viking and we're attacking the Scottish and the English. There's a life after that where I'm actually English fighting the Scottish. And we start to see patterns like this where we're actually fighting on every side of the same issue. Because if we don't live on both sides of the issue, we really don't learn compassion. And that's, again, one of those lessons. We're fighting on each side because we're literally fighting ourselves. We start to get to points where we see lessons, again, like we said, on ownership. A lot of ownership comes through in some slavery stories. And then we start to realize that we've been both black, we've been white, we've been Asian, we've been Hebrew. And so we were Egyptian. So we've actually had every skin color. I've been black 14 times. So we're really living on both sides of the issues. So we really are each other. We're not separate. We're not different. No, and that's another lesson. No one is special. Everyone is special.
Yes.
Those kind of lessons we keep coming through. And then we've even got lessons in some of our lives where we've been Muslim, we've been Jewish, I'm Catholic in this life, I've been Catholic in other lives. And we find that we've been Protestant and Catholic and Druids in one life, Mayans in another life.
That was interesting. The Druids.
Yes.
The Druid life is very interesting. Carla, tell them about your side of the Druid life.
Well, during that lifetime, I was actually Wiccan. And, of course, Wiccan, we think today as witches and spells, but that wasn't the case. Wiccans believe in nature. They're actually peaceful people. They were then anyway. And Dave and I, as children, went to the same school. He was a Druid. And the Druids, of course, didn't believe that women could be Druids. Druids actually did sacrifices. Wiccans did not. So Dave and I actually came together with those two religions, our families, with those two religions, and one of our main purposes was to try and stop the sacrificing.
Right.
And we also, it's a very interesting life because as children, our parents were enough advanced that they actually sent a small Druid boy who was really just the educated spiritual leaders of that group of people. But they sent a Druid boy and a Wiccan girl away to herbalist school to learn to be healers together. So that's an incredible thing in itself.
Well, I was going to say that commingling wasn't really done, was it?
It actually was at the time.
Okay.
So it's it's pretty interesting. Many of the women were healers at that time and were herbalists and those kind of things. That's why we say they're sort of like Wiccan, because and they believed that nature was going to offer all that was available to heal us. And of course, the Druids believed that they were praying to one or multiple gods of nature. So the two nature groups could sort of get together. And it actually worked well. It's interesting in that life, we have a memory of a maypole, which was a very Celtic kind of ceremony.
Tradition.
Where they tied us together on the maypole, and as we spun around the maypole, our wrists became knotted close together in the Celtic knot, which meant that we were joined together as, I'll say, as one, probably in our teenage years, and we did spend that life together and had children and those kind of things.
And cool.
Yeah. So some of the stories become interesting.
Dave, bottom line, Dave, is ownership will not end until war ends. And there should be no war between the sexes.
That's right. And then that's another one of those lessons in the book is in war, there really is no winner. The winner usually ends up with some sort of karma. And if you kind of want to think about war in general, if we go back through human history, you start to look at which war led to the next war, which led to the next war. And it's all about karma. You know, we could say that the Jewish attack on Jesus and his crucifixion and the rise of Christianity may have led to the Crusades, which led to more wars, which led to the Jewish people actually being destroyed as part of the Holocaust, all being part of the same karma. And until we stop wars, karma is going to continue.
Well, there's no way around it, but I think that individuals earn their karma separate from that, because the things that lead to war on a lower scale also lead to negative behaviors by individuals, like the greed, like the envy.
Yes, the envy, the jealousy. Absolutely, Kat. I think we have both individual karma and we have some group karma that ends up being part of what we're all living through. And one of the other lessons that we learned through meditation was that reincarnation was really God's plan from the beginning. Literally, God is like a loving parent who gives you chance after chance after chance to get this right. It's not one chance and you go straight to hell. We were told early on that there was no hell, and that all we need to do is learn all the lessons, go step by step through learning some of these lessons, deal with our karma, and the fact that we would raise our vibration and we would end up back in heaven with God.
You know, I've actually seen what was a comedic movie relevant to that scenario, and I cannot for the life of me remember it, but it was just like every time this person thought that they were achieving oneness, right, with the universe and God and humanity, there would come that moment where it would be like a time slip grabbed them and birthed again, right? So starting over and over and over. And I have in the past held that view about reincarnation. I know there are lessons we are supposed to learn from that. There are ways that we are supposed to build and conduct ourselves as a member of a community.
Of a community, that's exactly it. And the other thing, Kat, people will sometimes say, well, why don't you just ignore everybody and stay away from them and you'll develop no more karma because you don't? Well, the truth is we were created to interact.
Yes.
Not doing anything is going to still keep you on that karmic wheel. Inaction is just as bad as inaction is just as bad as an incorrect action.
Yes, it is. Sometimes it's more damaging.
And sometimes it's more damaging. And sometimes that's why sometimes you have to stand up for the underdog. You can't be violent to stand up for the underdog, but sometimes you have to make a stand. Otherwise, you're just going along with the same karma which oppresses or pushes somebody down.
Yes, absolutely.
So as we continued on our path and we kept meditating, again, we took past life regression training. I'm a physician, so there were lots of things that were very curious to me, so I started doing a lot of research on the side. I found out, and Carla had read one of his books, Dr. Brian Weiss, so we went for past life regression training. And for us, it was incredible because we found a whole group of people who had experienced something like we had. And they were very open-minded. Carla had some great experiences there because she got to regress some people from other countries. You should tell them a little bit about that, Carla.
Well, actually, there was one particular girl from Chile. Her hospital where she worked, she was a social worker, had sent her to learn past life regression therapy to be used on end-of-life patients. Now, these other countries from around the world, they are so advanced when it comes to this thinking. The United States seems to be so backward and so afraid to think outside the box. But this particular girl, as I regressed her, we were at the time of Nero. It was around AD 70, and we were in Jerusalem. And she was crying and upset because her son had been stolen, and she wanted her husband to help her go look for him, and her husband was afraid to do it. And I tried to jump her ahead to get her past those feelings. And unfortunately, I jumped her ahead right into the area of where, or she took us to, because you do have control, she took us to where her son was being killed by the Romans.
Oh,
and afterwards, yes. And afterwards, I would always say to the people, now you understand that that was then and it's not now, and that you had lessons to learn in that life. Were you happy in that life? Do you feel you did the best you could? And so on and so forth. And she told me that the boyfriend that she's engaged to now in this life, when they began dating, she was so jealous and consumed with watching everything he did and being around him all the time. And during this regression, she found out that son that was stolen from her and killed was indeed the same boyfriend that she's engaged to now.
Oh,
and of course,
my.
there's the feelings of, she was afraid she would lose him. So,
I have to interrupt
it was,
you. I'm so
Sure.
sorry, but we have to take this break. We'll be right back, and I want to continue this thought. We'll be right back, y'all. Y'all come back, too.
Okay.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the world wide web of weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am so pleased about that. As you know, it's been in publication since 1948, the longest running paranormal magazine in publication. So, I love it. But we are back with our guests, and David and Carla, I am so appreciative of you here. Carla, did you want to go on, or did you want me to bring you a question out of our chat?
No, we'd love to have a question.
Okay, and this is kind of interesting because a lot of the people who... I do another show called Paranormal Experience, so a lot of my listeners cross-mix, and because the topics that we have here are fascinating, relevant to how they interact with that, and this is one of those cases. April said, so if reincarnation is real, what are ghosts? She just doesn't know the belief on this.
All right, Kat. So I can tell you from interacting with many people on many reincarnation sites, and there are a lot of different experiences. I'm going to try to explain our experience so that I can share it with your listener. For us, there is no ghost who is trapped in this physical plane. However, much like I could talk to Carla's mother, everybody goes back to the light. Everybody crosses over. Everyone goes through a period of atonement. And then they go to a plane just above the physical plane. We call it just plane 2, which is the closest plane to the physical plane. And it's much easier from that plane to this plane to communicate. Those people who are waiting to return, they have, the ability to kind of watch what we're doing. B, they try to communicate with us, sometimes in an attempt to influence the world they're going to return to. Some of them actually are supposed to try to reach us because they may have in a past life or in their very, very last life injured us. And so apologizing may be part of their karmic growth. Carla received a message from her father after he passed that he was sorry that the family had split up. So I believe ghosts are that continued conscious stream of your soul that has returned to the spiritual plane and is awaiting to return to this plane, which is the physical plane. I don't know if that answers her question exactly, but I think those people still try to reach us. those are the people that many of the psychic mediums, the Long Island medium and John Edwards and those kind of people try to communicate with. Those people in the closest planes that are awaiting to return.
Well, if it's the level of atonement, then they should be busy with their own things and not really communicating with us unless we disturb them.
Well,
is that right?
That's relatively correct, because actually when you first pass over, you kind of adjust to this non-physical life, and then you actually go straight to atonement. Atonement or past life review. I've got to experience a few of my own periods of past life review, and then I got to experience my father, who just died a few years ago. I got to watch part of his past life review, and so I'm going to run through that real quick so people can kind of understand.
Okay.
My father, a couple lives ago, was a slave trader who sold slaves in Bermuda. He literally split families up. He chained people into the hull of his boat. He transported them across the ocean and sold them into Bermuda, and then finally up into the United States, or the Americas, because it wasn't all the United States yet.
Right.
And then in his next life, he was actually my father. However, when he was first married, his daughter was kidnapped. His wife died in childbirth while having me, which means he experienced the loss of his family. His daughter was split from him. His wife died early. Then, of course, I was shot in that life as J.J. Wright. In the next life, he was my father again. He was a high school principal.
That would be this life.
That would be this life. He was really a wonderful man. Cared about the students, did everything he could for the students. The last 20 years of his life, my father was chained in a wheelchair because he got Parkinson's at a very young age. So if you could kind of see karma here, as a slave trader, he split up families. In the next life, his family was split. And in this current life, he was chained in a wheelchair, again, chained in some sort of a disability, which is something we see sometimes with slave owner lives in the past. There might be a disability in this life, which again limits their motion, because that karma keeps following them. And the lesson that was so good about my father's atonement was that my father continued to be a positive, loving man, even when he became trapped in the wheelchair. It didn't define him. And so my father, when he passed in this life, went from atonement to what we call over the horizon, or to the final place where he's resting in heaven and does not have to return on this return cycle of reincarnation. So there is a possibility to get to that point where you can get off of this wheel and return back to God, Source, Tao. There's lots of different names that people will put to that, but get back to that whole of love that we came from.
Well, another comment in chat said that you're saying that there are no ghosts that can't move on. She doesn't really agree. She thinks some are stuck here with unfinished business. But that would be relevant back to the karma, wouldn't it?
Yes,
that would be relevant to the karma.
Because they don't choose to be stuck here, they just are stuck. Or
they
keep having to do the loop to learn the lesson.
Right. And that is some of the lessons that others who have had that experience has. My spirit guide has said, why, since you have died. Would God let you stay in this plane when atonement can start you back on this plane again? So that's just our experience, that God says nobody gets trapped on one side or the other.
Right.
It's an even flow. It's part of, it's sort of that same experience when people have an NDE. They immediately see the tunnel. They go up the light and they meet spiritual beings.
And they want to.
And they want to. And they meet their passed over loved ones that are there waiting. It's kind of interesting, Kat, because when you start doing a lot of reading, you find out that most past life regression includes some sort of a spiritual being that you meet in between lives. You meet your family again. You actually return in family groups. If you start to look at NDE literature, you find out most people see this light. They're taken by some sort of spiritual being. They frequently meet God, Jesus, some sort of a spiritual being, angels. They see their family, and then they return back in a next, either because they're told they weren't meant to come. So if it's an NDE, they return back. But much of those stories are very parallel through all of those literatures. And if we start to look at some of the reincarnation research, there's research by Ian Stevenson, Jim Matlock, that's been going on for 50 or 60 years. What they call verifiable reincarnation cases. They include 3-year-olds who say, I remembered when I was married to Mary. And their family goes, who's Mary? Mary lived in Johnson, Ohio. Well, they find Mary in Johnson, Ohio, and they return, and the little boy knocks on the door, and a woman opens the door, and he says, hi, Mary, do you remember when you were my wife? And then the little boy says, if you go upstairs and turn to the right, there's our bedroom. And the little boy runs up the stairs, he turns to the right, and there's Mary and her husband who passed bedroom. And he says, Mary, I hid $4,000 under the floorboard. And they dig up the floorboard, and there's $4,000. There's enough facts, names, that a little boy could not possibly have been coached enough to do what, and or have this spontaneous memory.
Yes.
And so they found around 2,400 cases like this that they have documented, trying to use research protocols where they study where they're from, who they returned as, what memories they have, and if there's enough factual memories that they can corroborate that this is another past life of this young child. Most of the researchers actually won't research past life regression because hypnosis is highly suggestible and there's a lot of fantasy that still can occur.
Mm-hmm.
So the researchers try to use all spontaneous memories that occurred in children. We have a story in the United States of a young lady who reported that she died in an airplane crash in another city in Oklahoma. And she remembers the crash, and she remembers the trees, and she remembers what the garage looked like. And they went to a place where this crash happened, and she identified the garage and where she was sitting and what trees were knocked down when the plane landed. Things that a 3-year-old, 4-year-old could not possibly know.
Well, we have got more questions coming up in chat, but we have got to go to our top of the hour break. And everyone who listens knows that I'm ever hopeful for good news, right?
Absolutely.
It's looking a little slim. But you know what? I'm positive that we are going to turn that curve. We're going to find some. And maybe tonight's our night. So we'll be back. This is our news hour. And it's a great time to stretch your legs, throw a few cartwheels, and be sure you come right back. Thanks for listening. You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. This is Fate Mag Radio.
This message comes from NPR sponsor, the University of Florida Warrington College of Business, where you can stand out in your field by earning a master's degree in one of their 7 specialized programs. Learn more at warrington.ufl.edu/NPR.
Live from NPR News, I'm Janine Herbst. Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer is accusing President Trump of inciting domestic terrorism. As NPR's Joel Rose reports, Whitmer made the statement today in response to Trump's campaign rhetoric in her state yesterday.
At a rally in Michigan, President Trump criticized Whitmer's efforts to contain the coronavirus, drawing shouts of "lock her up" from the crowd. Trump also made light of a militia group's plot to kidnap the Democratic governor that the FBI says it disrupted earlier this month. Whitmer responded on NBC's Meet the Press.
The president is at it again and inspiring and inciting this kind of domestic terrorism. It is wrong. It's got to end.
Whitmer said the president's rhetoric is dangerous for public servants who are trying to protect their constituents. Trump's daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, disagrees. She told CNN the president was just, quote, having fun at a rally. Joel Rose, NPR News.
Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden criticized President Trump for not condemning white supremacist groups and accused Trump of dividing the nation. Biden, campaigning in North Carolina today, told a group of African-American faith leaders that unifying the country is important.
4 more years of Donald Trump will fundamentally change the nature of this country for several generations.
Meanwhile, President Trump made a rare appearance at a church in Las Vegas this morning.
I want to just say this is a great honor, and you are something special, very special.
He holds a rally in the state later tonight. Both men meet for a debate this week. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she's giving the White House a 48-hour deadline to agree on a coronavirus relief package before the presidential election. And she says it has to include language on testing provisions that affect minority populations.
They took out 55% of the language that we had there for testing and tracing. And the tracing part is so important because communities of color have been disproportionately affected by this.
Speaking there on ABC's This Week. A decade-long UN arms embargo on Iran expired today. NPR's Peter Kenyon has more.
Iran's parliament speaker calls the end of the embargo a great failure for the U.S. government and a great victory for Iran. His remarks to Iranian lawmakers were reported by the state news agency. The expiration clears the way for Tehran to buy tanks, warplanes, and other weapons. Russia has already signaled its willingness to sell to Iran. Russia's foreign ministry says Moscow will take a look at military technical cooperation with Iran, calling Tehran a reliable partner for Russia. Iran's ability to pay for new weapons may be an open question, however. The country remains under punitive American sanctions, reimposed by the White House in 2018 after President Trump pulled the U.S. out of the 2015 nuclear agreement with Iran. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Istanbul.
U.S. futures contracts are trading higher this evening. You're listening to NPR News. Israel and Bahrain today agreed to establish formal diplomatic relations, making the small Gulf country the 4th Arab state to normalize ties with Israel. The agreement capped a one-day visit by a high-level delegation of American and Israeli officials to Bahrain. Representatives of that country joined the United Arab Emirates at a White House ceremony last month, marking the so-called Abraham Accords, a pair of U.S.-brokered pacts with Israel. In Australia, the people of Victoria, the epicenter of the country's second coronavirus wave, are getting some relief today. As Rachel Bongiorno reports, restrictions are beginning to ease after 100 days of strict lockdown.
The 5 million residents of Melbourne, the state's capital, have endured one of the world's longest pandemic-related lockdowns and the strictest in the country. Residents are no longer restricted in the number of hours they spend outside their home. The distance they can travel will increase to 15 miles, and stores and restaurants are expected to reopen for full operation by November 1st. in a state that almost stamped out the virus in early June, only to endure a spike a month later. The Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews says he's not doing what is popular, but what is safe.
There is a lot at stake, and if we do too much, too fast, then we'll be where none of us ever want to be again.
On Sunday, Victoria recorded just 2 new cases of COVID-19. For NPR News, I'm Rachel Bongiorno in Melbourne.
Crude oil prices are trading higher in overnight Asian trading at $40.95 a barrel. I'm Janine Herbst, NPR News.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. I am so glad to be affiliated with that group of people. They are wonderful, and they are totally knowledgeable on this subject as well. So, Phyllis, I hope you're enjoying it. Now, we had talked about some questions in chat. And are you ready?
Absolutely ready, Kat.
Okay. This is pretty good. It says, does everyone have spirit guides, and how do we learn who ours is?
That's a great question, Kat. Yes, everyone has a spirit guide. You've had a spirit guide since you first entered into your first incarnation. There's different ways that you can learn your spirit guide. I know if you go through a past life regression, usually you will meet your spirit guide at some time during those. The easiest way to meet your spirit guide, however, is to start to meditate. We found that meditation does enter your subconscious memory. That's another one of those scientific facts. But the subconscious is literally that depository of all of your past lives. It is also below the level of consciousness. It's what you reach when you reach the other side. So you can actually meditate, ask to meet your spirit guide. Frequently, if people do that, they will meet their spirit guide. Now, I'm going to tell you, meditation is not something that you learn to do in the first 30 minutes. It takes a long time to relax and learn to actually shut off your mind. I like to say that I was extremely blessed that it took 3 days and I reached some level that I talked to Carla's mother. But I think in reality, most people start by meditating and all they experience is some colors, some thoughts. They need to start to learn to listen to the voice that's not them. Most people will start, but you can, to meet their spirit guide, you may not be told your spirit guide's name until it's quite a while in, but it's literally listening to the voice that's inside you, and you have to shut off everything so that you can hear it.
And meditation, Kat, needs to be religiously. It has to be like brushing your teeth or making your bed. You make the time so that you can open yourself up and open your mind so that your guides can reach you. In my case, Dave's very gifted. He can go to past lives like it's happening right now, and he can tune in. I have to concentrate a lot. My spirit guide comes to me. I don't hear her. I feel her. It's in my left ear. But it takes practice. It takes a long, long, long time, and hopefully some of you are as gifted as Dave. But for people like me, it takes a long time, and it has to be a religious meditation.
That is interesting, because we have had so many people actually bring different ideas forward and into the chat as we speak. Sherry was wondering, does reincarnation have anything to do with deja vu? Because, yes, she is someone who is going to go out and try to find who her spirit guide is. I know her personally. She's vivacious, funny, and absolutely one of the most inquisitive people I know. I keep telling her she should have her own show. But,
so actually, yes, deja vu is definitely one of those signs that means that you probably had a past life, that you've had that experience or those words or that smell somewhere in the past. It could have been in this life, but it certainly can be in a past life. And Kat, just like you just said, this is somebody you know who's interested, vivacious, energetic, and you have met her and know her now, but probably when you met her the first time, there was a connection.
Absolutely.
Because there's most likely a connection, and she's probably within your soul group, which is a group that returns over and over again, and there's really sort of two sets of groups that you return with, either family mates, and they don't have to be your actual family, but many times they are your family, but they're those people that keep returning with you because you work well together. And there's another group that may be sort of part of your family mates, but they're your karmic mates that you meet over and over again because you have a hard time dealing with them. And so there's a growth that happens because you either learn how to overcome the jealousy you have for them, or you learn that they're toxic to you. And this is one of those real life lessons. If people are actually toxic to you, there's probably a good reason that you don't have to deal with them. You have to be your best self. And if somebody pushes you down, injures you, pushes you, hurts you, you can't possibly be your best self. If you can't be your best self, you can't love yourself. You can't truly love others. And loving others is what it's all about. So those karmic mates, those people who push your buttons, sometimes it's because you need to get out from underneath them. And that's a tough lesson.
Well, sometimes that deja vu can take you back to a person that you have karma with. For instance, Ruby's boss was Angelo Genna, the gangster.
Right.
And in this life, Angelo Genna was my first husband. I was drawn to him because we had previous karma to repair. It was like I had met him before. Well, this time we repaired our karma, and hopefully we're finished.
Get out of town. Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yes.
And,
we found.
Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, yeah. We found your past husband in multiple spots in your past lives.
I've had many lives with him. I've had many lives with my husband, Tom, and we've played all roles. I've been Tom's mother, Tom's neighbor, Tom's wife. We play these multiple roles. So when you meet somebody and there is that deja vu, there's that familiarity with them. It's for one of those reasons. Either you did something with them before, they're familiar to you. And I'll take it a little bit further. Tom and I were actually married in Bermuda. We have a life in Bermuda. Dave and I were indentured slaves. Tom was a slave master. My sister Paula, she was the little girl that was our next-door neighbor. My stepfather in this life was the neighbor in that life. We travel in these circles together. So when you meet somebody and you have that feeling of deja vu, or you go somewhere, like, for instance, to Bermuda. I was always drawn to Bermuda because I had a life there.
That's interesting. I find that very interesting because the people from my immediate family were the most uniquely mismatched individuals as far as personalities went, from the adults to the children. And
oh boy,
it was a very toxic environment. And I'm not talking just because of, adolescent stubbornness or, other things. I mean, these people should never have been in a room together, much less living as a family unit.
And Kat, you learned something from that because look at the person you've become. You outgrew the need for some of that toxicity. That family unit didn't work. And somebody had to make that family unit break.
Yes.
And so you have survived that. And isn't that part of what Lessons is about?
Thank you. And yes, I have. And I've done an awful lot of self-development and self-healing. So
that's what it's all about.
It is. And, it just fascinates me because when you said that, I had not really considered the fact that there were, there were just no possible methods. To me, there was no way that you wouldn't be with the family you were supposed to be. Right?
That's right.
And so Kat, so
you were
with the family you were supposed to be because you had to overcome it.
Yes. And I am a great overcomer now.
I think I believe that, Kat.
Well, I mean, I just, this isn't supposed to be about me, but it really was something that I took to heart, developed, and I have more inner strength than I would ever have believed possible because of the things that I have gone through in my lifetime. Because I'm a slow learner.
Those are blessings. Those are blessings,
It is a blessing. I am
and
totally blessed.
Kat, I believe we're all slow learners. If I've already had 42 lives and I'm still working on it.
I feel better.
There you go.
I feel better. But, I just think that it's interesting because there are a couple of different people in this chat that I have personally interacted with over the years. And it's, one of them is like, I was in France, I had many moments of deja vu. Does that mean I'm reincarnated as someone that visited there? And I told her, I said, you probably lived there in a past life or two.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
Like you were saying, you're called to Bermuda. I'm actually called to a lot of places, and I don't know that I'm going to get that ticket punched on every one of them in this lifetime, but I figure I'll catch them later. But it is, well, got to go somewhere. But it's interesting because the places that I am intimately drawn to are surprising to me. I mean, they're not. Cherokee, of course, Cherokee, North Carolina was absolutely a no-brainer. I am Native American. But it's, and my family are in both the Eastern and Western Band of Cherokee. But it's just interesting to me that, like Sherry, recognized that she felt that familiarity, but she didn't realize necessarily that that was her history.
Absolutely.
It falls right into place.
It's kind of freaky in a great way.
Kat, if you want to even know the list, it's very strange. We have a Mayan life, a Spanish life, an English life, a Scottish life, a couple Italian lives. And Carla has been to visit all of those places.
On vacation. And I didn't know why.
Well, I have a friend who is inordinately drawn to Scotland. Has felt his whole life that was a neat place, and he's he's achieved that goal and found his family history there. So I think that you have to heed those longings sometimes.
Yes, definitely.
And
here's
have to
a little
find that part of you.
Here's a little story about Scotland. When Tom and I went to Scotland, of course, he's Scottish, so he wanted to find his tartan.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out while we were there that his family did not have their own tartan. Why did they not have their own tartan? Because they worked for another family. Now, the Kidd tartan actually belonged to the McPhersons because the Kidds worked for the McPhersons in this life. My husband's name is Tom Kidd. My first husband's name, his mother's name was McPherson.
Really?
Now talk about an aha moment. That's like, oh my goodness, yes. It's so tied. We have these aha moments like every day.
And
well, but at least you know why.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we have this Viking life where we joined with the McKay clan, and the McKay clan slowly transformed into the McKee clan in Scotland, and Carla's family were McKees.
My mother is a McKee.
How interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go to break because we're actually late. But we will be...
Uh-oh.
It's okay. I'm not going to fire me.
Okay.
But we will be right back. And thank you so much for listening. I hope y'all are enjoying this as much as me. We'll catch you on the flip side.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Paratalk Radio is your one-stop for all things paranormal, the unknown, and the supernatural. Join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central for discussions and guests on topics such as ghosts, hauntings, Bigfoot, UFOs, and more. This broadcast is rated M for mature and intended for listeners over 16 on paratalkradio.com.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
The time is 23 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine. Thank you so much for being here because I am having the best time. I hope y'all are too. My guests tonight are just really unique and individual people to be, as I say, just plain old ordinary. Doubtful. But they have written 2 books. The first one is available everywhere. The second one you can get in Kindle
They
right
both
now.
are at. Yeah, they're
is
both
it already
available.
out? Because when I
out.
went to Amazon, it was like, oh, you can get the Kindle now, but forget that other one. Forget the hard copy. So I was just like, well, okay. But I'm just so fascinated. And as we've been going through our conversations, it dawned on me that we haven't mentioned one of the people who are in your title. And I am just kind of thinking, well, the title of the book is The Gift of Past Lives with Mother, Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. So we are in need of fixing that because we've talked about everyone except Elizabeth.
Dave?
I'll start anyway, Ben. But you should start, Carla, because Elizabeth is this energy that is incredibly sweet, innocent. It's actually very interesting because we actually looked up what Isabella meant and what Elizabeth meant, and they're actually derivatives of the same name.
Really?
And so,
I didn't know that.
and so we found that interesting because it both means, sort of messenger from God, or my oath is God. And we found that was very interesting. Elizabeth has appeared to Carla as a little girl. She's appeared as a black woman with dreads and sunglasses. She kind of has a whimsical kind of attitude. I could see her walking with a little shepherd's hook, or you could see her on a motorcycle driving at 60 miles an hour. She's got the soft
side. But she recently appeared to me with eyeliner, real thick eyeliner, because we were talking about Cleopatra.
Ah,
yeah.
That's
so
funny.
So they actually are funny. They respond, and supposedly what they've told us is their job, besides helping us get home, their job is to learn human emotion.
Oh, that's tough. That's a tough job.
Very.
It's a very tough job. So they feel our sorrow when we're sad, and they feel our love because they have never been separated from God. They don't feel sorrow unless they feel ours. And then they feel that joy when we feel love because it brings them back to the feeling that they live in all of the time. And that kind of leads us to another little lesson is people are always asking about, why do we have free will? And the lesson they've told us is we really have free will because love can't be forced. God lets you have free will. You make your own decisions, your own choices, because you can't love out of fear. You can't love because somebody tells you to love them. You can only love if you choose to love freely. And that's part of the lesson of why we're all down here, is that we have to choose love to return home. Because if God said, you're supposed to be scared of me and you're supposed to love because I say so, and you loved him, it wouldn't be a free will. It wouldn't be a choice.
Right.
And so part of this journey is to learn to let go of your ego and to love freely.
Those are very difficult things to learn, particularly letting go of the ego, because that is deep within our makeup.
It's deep within our makeup. It's actually was one of the other lessons we've learned of that we literally have to have this deep in our makeup, or we couldn't survive the separation from God, because we are normally bathed in love when you're in heaven. If you didn't have a sense of ego and self-preservation, and in fact some of that human hardness, you wouldn't survive that. And literally when we started, we had to have some sense of self-preservation or will to survive, or you couldn't have made it. And so part of our journey is overcoming our own will to survive and self-preservation, and realize that we have to give to others instead of worrying about ourselves.
Well, that's a difficult lesson to learn, but when you do, it's so satisfying. We have a question for you.
Sure.
And this one, I'm curious about the answer. I don't know which way this is going to go. So, since you've had interactions with so many things, has there ever been anything through this study, this experience, this learning, that frightened you, that scared you?
I'll say one thing, Kat, scared me, and I would only say it scared me because it was startling.
Mm-hmm.
When the first time I saw an angel eye, it was so immense to my perception that I thought that it was coming to swallow and destroy and overwhelm me. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It just was immense.
It was
Just
very
the
early
eye?
on.
Yeah, just the eye is all I saw, and it just kept coming and coming at me, and it was more than I could even understand. Since then, it doesn't frighten me. Angels have sort of no boundaries, and so they appear immense to us, even though when we all die and finally end up in spirit, we really don't have boundaries. But angels don't contain themselves, so they're everywhere. Angels are literally God in action. Spirit guides are literally God in voice reaching out to us.
Interesting. That's...
And we all have angels too.
Yes, that I do know. Well, I know about mine. I'm not going to
That's
assume
perfect.
for everyone.
Yes. Well, everybody gets an angel, and this is something it's even in the third book that we're working on, but you actually get angels related to your horoscope, because it's usually a lesson that you have to learn. And so you get an angel specifically to help you with either conceit, jealousy, selfishness, or unforgiveness when you come back in your next incarnation. So you actually change your astrological sign as you go through this, so that you can work on another type of lesson if you have a need in that area.
Oh, dear heavens. I'm Scorpio.
Yeah.
I know what that is.
Oh,
Oh, goodness. My angel probably looks like she was ridden hard and put up wet. So that's that's just a poor thing.
Well, how do you know it's a girl?
Because
They're
I do.
neither.
Because I do.
They're whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yes. So, and apparently this has caught everyone's fancy, because Sherry says, "Holy cow, what the heck is an angel eye?" Why was that what you saw? Just the eye?
I just saw the eye. Well, I think it's partially to start with. Much of my experience was related to the eyes. I saw Carla's mother's eye facing the opposite direction. I saw Isabella's eye. Then I saw an angel eye. And then I saw what appeared to be an eye that exploded in energy and shot to space that I was told was God's eye.
Holy
wow. So when I say that, it's part of their personal identification, and it's something in the eyes that we see when we look at someone else and we know we've known them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you want to call it, the eye is some sort of window to the soul. That's what I'll call it.
Well, that works for me. And I have a good friend who is in chat who said, I wonder what lesson I'm supposed to learn with all I'm going through right now. And I'm not that great of a friend because I can't remember what her birthday is. So I'm sorry. But, you know, but when she first started this journey, I was like, well, the lesson is that you're enough. And I think that's a large part of what she is pulling out of this.
That's absolutely true, Kat. You are exactly who you're supposed to be. God doesn't make mistakes. God created you exactly the way you're supposed to be. You're exactly at the point in life you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be learning these lessons. You don't have to have some incredible skill. You don't have to have some incredible gift, because what you have is yourself to give. And that's all you need.
And she is enough.
Absolutely enough.
And Carla, I was going to tell you, I kind of laughed it off, but I have always felt, well, actually not really, but lately I have felt that my angel is female, because I just think that with some of the shenanigans I went through when I was younger, that they've probably had to tag team. So, yeah.
So, Kat, it is possible to have more than one angel, just so you're aware of that.
But I think that the nurturing side is helping and guiding. So as opposed to the one that was having to keep up and hang on to the windshield wiper when we made a turn and stuff like that. But what do you think, and this is for each of you separately, what do you think the most obvious moment of divinity shared itself with you?
Carla, do you want to do that first?
Yeah, I think I was reading. I've always read astrology books and self-help books, all along the spiritual nature for years and years. And I was home by myself one day, and I was looking through. It's called a horoscope birthday book. And in this particular book, you know how they tell you what signs get along with what signs, blah, blah, blah. Well, they're partway correct, and then a lot of it is just conjecture, people's opinions. And I was reading what signs in friendship should get along. And none of my friends got along with my astrological sign, and I was really depressed about it. And I thought, wow, am I made incorrectly? Did I do something wrong? This was very early on before we, learned all these lessons. So when I went to bed that night, I was, for me, it's in those moments between sleep and waking up and vice versa is when I get a lot of visits from the spiritual world. And I saw this bright eye looking right at me, very crystally clear, kind of a grayish blue. And I went back to sleep, and I thought, what was that? And then the next time I saw the head of a serpent walking on like a brick path. And I thought, what the heck is that? Just the head, no body. And I thought, that's really strange. But anyway, when I got up in the morning, what I had started to do was whatever visions I got, I would draw them. Because, when it's a vision, I can draw it. I could draw it today because it's pretty clear. So I drew them. And then later I said to Dave, this is really strange. This is what happened. So he talked to Isabella, and Isabella said that the I was God. God was saying to me that reading that book and what you were reading and what you were believing was not correct. The serpent on the path, he was trying to show me something that I would have understood from my Catholic days. You know, the Catholics are big into serpents, the snake being evil, blah, 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 blah. And he was trying to show me that path was incorrect. And I appreciated that so much. I thought to myself, God's really busy. And God came to me in a vision and showed me and told me not to worry, that it wasn't correct, that although astrology is correct, all of that other stuff is mumbo-jumbo, and it is conjecture, and it's based on opinion. And that was a moment for me where I thought, you read and you hear people say, I talked to God, I saw God. And until all of this for us, we didn't know, we didn't understand, we didn't know who was telling the truth, who was making it up, who was having hallucinations. But when you get onto all of these reincarnation sites, there are a lot of people who see God and talk to God and Jesus. It's not just us. There's a lot of people, God's there and talking. So, but anyway, that was my moment.
If you look throughout history, this is one of those strange sort of Christian teachings that says after Jesus was here that God sort of quit talking, but there are still multiple Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, Protestant mystics that have been getting messages. And the truth is, God never stops trying to reach us. For me, the experience was Carla asked one day, who is God? And I simply heard the answer, I am.
Yes.
And I bawled because I felt something that I couldn't even imagine that I could feel. And that it was so overwhelming and the power was so strong. And I started to cry and weep. And I tried to tell them what I was feeling, and I just cried harder. Now, I am sort of a soft character, but I don't usually just bawl on a whim. But it was so overwhelming. And we kept getting lessons like that. We kept hearing things like, there is no hell.
Yes.
We were talking about angels. And I'm not going to tell people they shouldn't look at the Bible. Because we were told it's a good guide. And if you read the Bible, the only time that they literally make a reference to Satan in the Old Testament is in the book of Job. And in the book of Job, God assigns an angel the job of Satan. And in Old Arabic, Hebrew, Satan is literally the adversary, like a judge or jury. It is part of a legal discussion.
Right.
So when God gave an angel the job, Satan, he said, I think Job's a good man. So Satan says, well, that's because Job's rich. God says to Satan, well, make him not rich and see what happens. So Satan makes Job not rich, and Job is still a good man. And then God says, all right, so I proved my point. You're a good man. If you're a good man, it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. Now you can come back and be a regular angel.
Right.
That's the book of Job. That's not angels fell from heaven and became evil people and mated with people on earth, and then they formed giants. Even though that's in the book of Enoch, the Neraphim's in the Bible. Some of the stories in the Bible are stories to explain how evil began. But the reality is, evil began because men made their own free will choices.
Yeah, but we have to run this break. We will be right back, and we'll continue, and we have some more questions for y'all. You're going to love them. So,
okay.
Everybody come on back. We'll see you on the flip side of this.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
This is Jason Bland, host of Midwest Paranormal Presents Paranormal Soup, where we stream live as a webcast every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern, with guests who will blow your mind. Live ghost box sessions where you can call into the show to see if the spirits will talk to you, and the world wide web of weird with the latest in paranormal news and evidence. We're bringing the weird every Sunday night, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Don't forget to follow and subscribe.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour. Welcome back to Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am so pleased that you are here. I am so fortunate to be able to meet fantastic people like our guest tonight and to be able to have these conversations. I have learned more than I ever expected from their book and from them personally. I am looking forward to continuing to build this friendship. Thank y'all so much, Dave and Carla, for being here. And
it's a pleasure, Kat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have two more questions, and if you're okay with that, you good?
Let's go for it.
Okay. Sherry says, sometimes as I'm falling asleep, I hear a female voice say, Sherry, and nothing else. It startles her. What do you think that might be?
That could be her angel, that could be her spirit guide, or it's possible that it could be somebody that's waiting to reincarnate. But it shouldn't startle her, because if it's somebody that is waiting to reincarnate and her spirit guide doesn't want her to talk to them, they'll just cut them off.
Yeah, I would almost bet it's her spirit guide, because she is really in that open spot between sleep and wake, which is much like people who are hypnotized, much like people who meditate. She's the most open, and if that's when she's most open, they're going to try to reach her.
Interesting. Now,
left ear usually.
I'm sorry, left ear?
Left ear.
Usually in your left ear is where you hear it.
Hey, Sherry, type it, that's your left ear. Her, the final question from her is, well, it's going to wind up not being the final, but that's okay, because I love her questions. What is your opinion on demons? Do you think they are prominent?
Kat, from our experience, there are no demons. There is no Satan. There is no devil. There are not demons. All of the demons are what we have to deal with within our own head, and with all of our neighbors. They're your karmic mates. It's really man's own selfishness, jealousy, and conceit that is causing the experiences that we have. If we rid ourselves of those, there will be no negative experience and no demons.
Well, now,
And
see,
your
that
mind
is
can
an
conjure up
interesting
whatever you're afraid of.
And Sherry said, yes, true, left ear. Why don't they tell her more?
Tell her to keep listening and tell her to start meditating and ask the spirit guide what her name is.
Oh, now I'm going to go out there on a limb myself and say that someone told me to try that. And what I got did not, to me, feel like a name. But I got it 3 separate times when I asked. And when I Googled like the origin of this word, it never finds it. It never finds the word itself. So would it be something so unusual as to not be a known word in our time?
Yeah,
it's very possible, Kat, because if we go back 6,000 years, first of all, there's no written word till about 1000 BC. So much of the language before that time is just language as it's passed on. And there are so many languages that have died. It is possible that your spirit guide first spoke to you a name in your first life or incarnation, and she sticks with that name, and that language is now dead.
That's interesting, because I was so frustrated. Because I was like, why am I not getting this? I am sensitive. I hear things all the time. Why am I having trouble with this? Is it because I asked because I'm being pushy? I didn't feel pushy. And maybe I was a little pushy. But I wanted
Did you tell
an
us you
answer.
were a Sagittarian?
Huh?
No, she's a Scorpion.
I'm a Scorpio.
Scorpion. Oh, well, same thing. I'll go with that.
Magnified. But that's okay. Yeah, I kind of like who I am, and I try to be very pleasant. So, it's what it tells me, Sherry, is it's okay to say it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Malgonquin.
Algonquin? With an N?
That sounds Indian.
Yeah.
It does. Well, there's actually an Indian tribe of the Algonquin.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I was, that was the closest thing I could find to it. So, I don't know, but I got it 3 different times when I had specifically asked each of those times, and I just thought it was my mind playing with me because it was so unusual.
So, Kat, your friend, tell her to, when she's waking up in the morning, to just kind of lay there for a while and meditate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when she is kind of in between the 2 states, and just kind of listen. Dave, explain to them how you talk about how you meditate, what you do with your eyes.
All right. So when I meditate, at least when I first started, I found that I concentrated and felt like I was looking backwards with my eyes. I literally felt almost a contraction of the eyeballs backward. And to start with, it looked dark, and then it started to explode with lights. So it's part of this turning off, not looking outward into the world, but looking deep within yourself. Somewhere deep in yourself is that receptor of the soul, is the receptor of the communications with the spirit guides. So you're really going to find it in yourself by shutting off everything that's outside of yourself. You need that quiet music if you need it to distract you so you don't hear the cat running across the room or the dog. but you need to shut that off. It used to be a lot more difficult. Literally for me, I could shut it off in 2 to 3 seconds. Kat, I'm just going to tell you that Isabella says that you can just call your spirit guide Alice.
Alice?
Alice, if that'll make you feel better.
Well, it does, but, it was just such a surprisingly exotic name.
Yes, it's very exotic. She says if you need something that seems modern and up to date, she would be happy with Alice.
Okay. Well, I have had the best time with this conversation. It's thank you so much for taking all these questions, because the answers have been great. And I want to let people know that y'all are very accessible. You've got 2 books. They're both I'm reading the first one. I'm not quite done, but it is just absolutely fantastic. I have done a lot of reading about you. I have heard other people having conversations with you, and you're just fantastic. But the first book is The Gift of Past Lives with Mother Isabella, God, and Elizabeth. The second book is, I'm going to get it backwards. Let me find it. It is Reincarnation, Hell No, which I find very...
Reincarnation.
Hell no. I told you I was going to get it backwards.
Yep.
And because I've typed it both ways for 2 or 3 days now. But you can find them on your webpage, which is thegiftofpastlives.com. And, it's just been fantastic. I love your site, by the way. But
thank you, Kat.
We have April, who I told you was our ancient text scholar.
Yeah.
And she has a question really quick.
Sure.
Okay.
And I tried to answer it. It was before the show even started. But 2 of her kids had the same dream on different nights. Neither knew the other had the dream. They told her individually, and she didn't share it. So it was about a pet trying to eat them with a weird smiling face. So that, I never doubt things when they're odd like that, but it gives me pause because cats are, to me, a little bit odd.
I used to say cats were odd, that they were nothing but sharks with furs swimming around ready to eat you. But I happen to love the 2 cats that we have now, so I won't say that anymore. I think the fact that there are 2 identifiable dreams that are related means that there is certainly some past life memory that these 2 kids have together. Now, whether they're literally eaten in that life by an animal, I have heard stories and have experienced past lives where a lot of things happen. So I wouldn't question that. Maybe they were brothers in a past life, and maybe they were both somehow consumed by an animal, and somehow they still have that experience. Are they scared of animals in this life?
I don't know. April?
It's an interesting question, because a lot of past life memories come up that are related to phobias and those kind of things.
Absolutely. I cannot even touch the picture of a snake in a book.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. So I don't even dwell on that. But it is my one phobia.
Ugh.
I probably have a lot more, but that one's just so strong it pops out every time I talk about them. But, well, we are out
Yeah.
of time.
Can I say one last thing, Kat?
Please do.
Okay, I just going to leave the listeners with one more idea. Whatever you believe in reincarnation, we're not always taking good care of the planet. We're not always taking good care of ourselves. In some way, shape, or form, if you believe in reincarnation and karma or not, you're either leaving this planet to your kids because we're not taking care of it, or remember, if you believe in reincarnation, the mess you leave on this planet is the mess you're returning to.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's absolute truth. And no matter how many little bracelets I buy, I just have a hard time thinking that my $10 is going to clean the whole ocean. But I keep buying them.
Keep buying them. Keep picking up. Keep picking up the pop cans or whatever you can see.
Absolutely. I do what I can where I can every time I can.
And keep cutting the plastic around your bottles.
Every time. I am a sea turtle girl.
Aww.
And a dolphin girl.
Oh,
So-
Kat, we knew we liked you.
Yeah.
Are you kidding? I am actually a beach bum. I'm just waiting to retire. Right?
Oh.
So, beach bum at heart. So,
It's a good thing.
my goodness, you have gotten so many compliments. Everybody just loves this show. It's fascinating. And Sherry said that she's never meditated a day in her life and not sure how to do it. I said, you just chill and breathe. So,
Absolutely.
Well, thank you
You can do it.
again. We're going to have to do this again. Maybe we can come on and just expand on some of this soon. But thank you again. And for everyone listening, I know y'all get tired of this, but maybe not. But, I absolutely believe that we are the change that we want to see. And you can manifest things just with your energy. We all have that ability. Just refuse to accept the negative, right?
Yes,
Be the
absolutely.
positive. Go out there and pick up that can. Go out there and smile at that person that looks like they might want to kill you. Because maybe they haven't gotten enough encouragement in their life. Don't encourage them to kill you. Just smile. Be kind. And, but it really is, seriously. It is all about the change. We're coming into a time period where people are so fearful because of the violence that we've seen in our country. And they're afraid it's going to touch them, too. Well, we all have the power to stop that in its tracks. It doesn't matter who the talking head is. What matters is that as a human species, we are united. Love matters, and so does peace and tranquility. So generate that, won't you? I would appreciate it. And with that, I'm going to say good night. And may you be protected and blessed as you go into your week. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Dave and Carla. I enjoyed you.
Peace and love to you too, Kat.
Thanks. Good night, everyone. Y'all have a great week.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.